So earlier this week, I was listening to the Bob and Tom show, and guest comedian Jeff Bodart shared how he spends a lot of time doing shows on cruise ships. And he talks about how he loves people watching, especially towards the end of the cruise, because there's always a guy walking around in a poncho. He says that's the guy who ran out of clean clothes to wear, but doesn't want to admit his wife was right when they were packing, so he wears the poncho. It says women pack for what ifs. I know that's a generalization, but women pack for what ifs. What if we go somewhere nice? What if I get something on my top? What if I pee my pants? But men pack for what nows. You'll never surprise a guy with a destination. What now? What I'm wearing is fine. And he goes on. And it made me think, do you prepare for what ifs or live in the what nows, and is one better? Now, I come by my what if packing through my Jewish mother. She instilled in us to think of all the possible ways something could go wrong and be proactive in preventing, or at least being able to smoothly address any mishap that could occur. Except I've come to learn there are an infinite number of what-ifs that exist, and you cannot actually prepare for them all. Case in point, dare I say, we were quite pleased with ourselves. Our service outlines were set early, our sermons were written and outlined, and we were ready to go well in advance of the holiday. But I will tell you, I did not have two people getting laryngitis on my high holiday bingo cord. Love you, Courtney. And some other unexpected snags of this last week. So while preparing for as many what-ifs as I could imagine theoretically deters anxious feelings about what could happen, accidents, injuries, illnesses, delays, walks down Riverside, it doesn't really succeed at addressing what actually happens and does not eliminate our anxiety entirely. So then I think, what about our what now packers? Maybe they have it right. I think they live in the present, they go with the flow, they trust that they'll be able to solve any problems that arise, or perhaps that their what if spouses have it covered. I really don't understand being able to walk around without a Mary Poppins bag. But I also don't want to be the person in a poncho at the end of the cruise. So maybe that's not the best way either. And I think this gives a glimpse of the approach of the mindfulness movement that's gained traction in recent time, which is about living in the moment, being present. And based on the research that long-term stress exposure and anxious feelings lead to harmful effects on our physical bodies, the obvious solution is to avoid all anxiety and worry. Jews were bad at that. On the surface, it makes sense. And in the last decade or so, even a little bit longer, we've led to the creation of dozens of scientifically validated therapies, 30 different anti-anxiety medications, hundreds of self-help books, and rigorous scientific study around anxiety. But a snag became clear. Despite all these growing methods of reducing anxiety, there is more anxiety out there. So I'm here to tell you on Yom Kippur, it seems we've messed it up a bit. Psychologist and author Tracy Dennis Tawari, in her latest book, Future Tense, explains in far greater detail what I just told you about. However, she does not say that mindfulness practices or any of the others that are meant to reduce anxiety are ineffective. Rather, she identifies what she believes is our collective mistake. Essentially, she argues that while addressing the very real impacts of clinical, diagnosable anxiety disorders, which by definition negatively impact daily living and can be harmful, we managed as a society to add your normal, run-of-the-mill anxious feelings and worry under the umbrella of harmful and bad anxiety. To put it in Jewish legal language, we put fences around fences around fences and ended up with a bigger problem. The assumption that stress is bad leads to avoiding and limiting stress. But generic stress in and of itself is not damaging or harmful, and in fact is necessary for our well-being. Like our immune system, our emotional life requires a certain degree of activation to stay robust. Just as it is perfectly healthy for most people to eat a handful of peanuts, those with allergies should avoid them. For most people, a regular level of stress and worry and anxiety is healthy. And for those with anxiety disorders, that's where more of the avoidance may come in. We actually learned regarding allergies from Israelis who, and if you've been to Israel, you are familiar with bamba. It's a peanut-based puffy snack. The early and regular exposure of infants to bamba, to peanuts, reduces the risk of peanut allergies. It is not the peanuts that are the issue, but our reaction to them, or our body's overreaction or oversensitivity, that becomes the problem. And the same is true for anxiety. Anxious feelings are not detrimental for most people. And when we experience this and other negative emotions, we build our resiliency to face them again in the future. Active avoidance of stress and anxiety internalizes that we cannot handle the stressor, and our skills to handle those stressors begin to get rusty, making it harder the next time that emotion is activated. And it creates a vicious cycle. And this has been proved through the unintended consequence of trigger warnings, intended based on scientific evidence to prime people to handle potentially difficult content so they could prepare themselves mentally before engaging with it. It came to backfire as too many people saw content warnings as a reason to avoid the content rather than to thoughtfully interact with it. Rather than promoting the use of our resilience muscles, these warnings seem to increase anxiety and negative emotions and avoidance behaviors instead. And now it's very controversial whether to use them or not. Our aforementioned tools, meditations, mindfulness exercises, medication, and others can and should be part of our toolkit, not to be used to avoid stress and anxiety, but to work through them, these otherwise healthy and beneficial feelings. Tracy Dennis Tawari gives 3 principles for run-of-the-mill anxiety, again, differentiating from clinical level disorders. First, we should treat anxiety as information. Listen to it. If you have an upcoming test or presentation and are nervous, it is probably not because the test or presentation is scary and dangerous, but rather this is our body, our mind's way of telling us this subject is important, this job is important to us, or similar. And it's actionable. You can study more, you can do more preparation, you can make sure you're rested or well-fed, just not on Yom Kippur. And in this way, these anxious feelings help us be resilient through the test, through the presentation, or whatever it is. Her second principle, if anxiety gives us information, it may not be useful information, in which case we can let go of the future tense and return to the present. The classic example here is waiting for test results, medical or academic or otherwise, where there is nothing you can do once you've handed in the exam or gotten the blood drawn or the biopsy taken to change the results. And we might think this anxiety is not helpful because we can't change the result, but it too is actionable because the way our bodies work, that anxiety also releases oxytocin, a bonding hormone that triggers social connection and encourages us to lean on our friends and family for support to make that waiting easier. Her third principle is that when anxiety keeps coming back, either you set it aside and it comes back, or it's the same anxiety over and over, to hitch it to a sense of purpose. And this persistent anxiety is often over the biggies, anti-Semitism, climate change, chronic health issues, and the like, that we cannot fix in one go. And I'm using the word persistent because we don't want that anxiety to fester, but rather we want to use it to acknowledge and honor the values that we hold closest to our heart, to redirect ourselves to a more productive path. And as Jews, we've been doing this for generations. On this day of Yom Kippur, we stand in judgment, and our liturgy tells us we are anxious and trembling before God. We do not hide, cast away, or suppress these feelings of inadequacy, regret, embarrassment, but we declare that teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah will temper judgment's severe decree. We hold space and we renew our purpose. Teshuvah, repentance. We take what has occurred in the past and reflect to change our behavior for the future. We take information about our surroundings and adapt our behavior to better represent our values. We learn from past mistakes to influence the present. Tefillah, prayer. We come together as a community, or even when we're praying by ourselves, using our liturgy links us to the Jewish community of generations past. When anxiety is not giving us actionable information, this is when we gather more intentionally. Stepping into this room on these days creates a space where we all hold each other's hardships together, and they all become a little lighter and more manageable. And tzedakah, righteous and charitable acts. We pray with our feet from a sense of Jewish purpose. Rather than fearing what could be, we work to change what is for a better tomorrow. We let our anxiety over big issues empower us rather than overwhelm us. The anxiety of the Jewish community right now is palpable. I believe it comes from the knowledge of our past and is also from a sincere concern for our future. I've heard questions like, what if anti-Semitism continues to rise? What if Israel does or does not defeat Hamas or any of the other questions coming out of the Middle East? What if the current situation in the world keeps making me feel alone? And this is information. It reminds us of our core values, of our Jewish identities, of the importance of human dignity and freedom for all, and I could go on. It builds community, Jewish unity, Jewish peoplehood is the force that draws us together in good times and hard times. And hopefully we find our emotional life is a little more manageable by being shared with those sitting around us and online and in our hearts. And it builds our purpose. Through small acts, we put our fears to our benefit and to the world's benefit. A scarf made for sacred stitching, a vote cast in the Zionist World Congress, a phone call or visit through our Caring Connections group, an hour of weeding in the native garden on a Sunday, a night of serving at St. Vincent de Paul, attending a Shiva minyan, even if you didn't know the deceased so well, and the list goes on. All of these address the core of what it means to be Jewish and what it means to be Jewish here at Temple. What now Packers go with the flow? Maybe we need not a what if Packer or a what now Packer, but a different kind of Packer. One that embraces the introspection of this period, the communal approach to this season, and the ability to engage in proactive change that creates good out of our worry. What if we all committed today to put an anxious worry of the past year to good, to do one little thing this year, or each season this year, or each month this year? What if we change tomorrow for the better because of our worry, not despite it? What if we change judgment's severe decree for ourselves, our community, and the world just a little bit? One stitch, one phone call, one action at a time, we can. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. And as we abruptly conclude our morning service,